No, it's tomorrow. No, it's Friday.
Yeah, 2 days.
Yeah, that's right. They're taking Friday. They're taking 2 days off.
You need 2 days off.
Well, I forgot because normally they've been playing pretty frequently. They're taking the 2 days off. I guess they didn't want to go against Thursday Night Football, but they don't seem to mind to go up against Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
You're picking football to go against. You go against Thursday Night Football, not Sunday Night Football. And by the way, I hate the 9 o'clock Friday start. These games have all been like the 7 o'clock. Give me the 7. I know they're trying to get the West Coast because the Lakers, but a 9 o'clock start, man, the ratings have not been good. It's not their fault. They've been all over the place. Times, you're out of season. But I want to start there with Keith Smith, who joins us now from Yahoo Sports, covers the NBA. Big picture, Keith. Is there some concern with the NBA about the ratings and about the product as a whole, or is this just a byproduct of, hey, you're out of season, you're up against football, you're up against baseball, you're typically not playing in October? Is there some concern or not really?
What I would say from talking to folks with the league is they wish that they were doing better, but they understand why they're not. If you look across the landscape of sports, all of the ratings are down. Even football has taken a hit. And there is a sense that this is just kind of something that everybody's going through. So they're not overly concerned about it. They're encouraged that Major League Baseball, despite some declining ratings, just got a pretty good new contract. So they feel pretty good about where they'll be positioned. But, yeah, they're not concerned, but they do wish they were doing better.
All right. Well, are they going to get a chance to do better? Their next game's Friday night at 9 o'clock. You got a 3-1 series now. Does this series have the feeling of it being over?
Yeah, I think this is probably it. I think when you saw LeBron James take over that game late the other day, it looked like he was just saying, we're not losing. Going to win. I think Miami found some stuff that worked in Game 3, but then Frank Vogel had halftime of Game 4, said, you know what, we'll just play small then, where he didn't even play Dwight Howard in the second half at all after starting him. JaVale McGee hasn't seen the floor all series long. He went right to Markieff Morris and said, you know what, we'll play small. We're going to switch everything that you throw at us. We're not going to let Jimmy Butler hunt mismatches, and we'll take that away. And that was, the big move that won that game for them.
I definitely want to credit the Heat for their effort over the last couple of games. It's definitely something to admire. They're leaving it out there on the floor. But when I look at the game that they did win, Jimmy Butler, 40-point triple-double, that's amazing. That's awesome. But with the injuries, to expect him to live up to that type of hype for them to actually win a game, it just seems so unrealistic where, you can't, as great as Jimmy Butler is, he's not a 40-point triple-double guy, and that's how they had to squeak out their win. It doesn't seem like they really had a ton of recipes for success, especially after the injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I was talking with a friend of mine, and he's like, it just feels, like Butler has to do everything. And the point I made to him was, I said, it feels a little bit like LeBron back in the day, right? And he's like, I didn't really think about that, but yes. And that is a little bit what it feels like. It feels like Jimmy Butler was kind of, I don't want to say he was out there by himself because Miami has other good players, but without Bam Adebayo in a couple games here with Goran Dragic hurt, it just really changed the series. I thought Miami was going to be able to keep this thing competitive and really challenge the Lakers, and they've been in these games. It's just they just don't have enough offense, especially to get over the hump against the Lakers team that's pretty good defensively.
Yeah, obviously this is such an odd situation with the bubble and the 2020 and the pause. And you look at LeBron and the Lakers here. Do you look at this team as a great team? Do you look at them as just hey, this has just been an odd year? Or, how do you look at this particular Lakers team? Because after LeBron and Davis, it's kind of like you're like, all right, this team's okay. But is this like a really, really good Lakers team or just an okay Lakers team?
I don't mean this at all to knock them as what looks like going to be a likely champion, because they certainly earned it. I don't believe that there's any sort of asterisk that should go next to it. But no, I don't think they're one of the great teams. I don't think that this team would necessarily beat any of the past handful of champions, minus, maybe that LeBron Cavs team, but even that team had Kyrie Irving, and they were able to do some different things. And Kevin Love, and that team, that big comeback. But yeah, I don't know that it was, necessarily, as you look at it, I think they did a good job putting the roster together around those two stars as best you could. You wanted a bunch of guys who could play defense and didn't really need the ball. Rajon Rondo's return has been huge as a secondary playmaker. But other than that, yeah, it's a bunch of good players, but there's nobody else great on that team. I'd be surprised, maybe Kyle Kuzma will make an all-star team, but he's probably the only one of the rest of that roster that'll play in an all-star game from this point forward. And that's even questionable. But yeah, that's kind of what you do now, though. You can build a great team around, or build a really good team around two great players and have pretty good results.
Yeah, that was kind of the conversation heading into the season because we've been so accustomed to a team that has a big three and a team that has three powerful players, and it was like, okay, who's going to take them down? This year, heading into the NBA season, it was look at all of these duos. So I agree with you that it was a duo this year in LeBron and AD, but I am impressed with that secondary type of players because Rondo, even though he only had one bucket, it was that layup late. Players stepped up, whether it was KCP with a couple shots or Danny Green with a couple shots or Morris. Like the role players for the Lakers are stepping up, and that was something that we questioned before the series started. What would happen if they didn't? Well, you're seeing them doing it, and it's resulting in success.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, there was a lot of talk of, all right, the two best players in the series are LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and then Miami may have the next 5, 6, 7 best guys, and that wasn't crazy to think that way. But then, yeah, I think some of the Lakers, they've got some proud veterans: Danny Green, Rajon Rondo, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's been around for a while, Markieff Morris. I think those guys took a little bit of offense to that and said, hey, we can play and we're going to show what we can do when we're given time. And I think Frank Vogel has done a really underrated job of just continuing to kind of plug pieces in as they go. JaVale McGee was their starting center all year long. He went away from him and went to Dwight Howard in the Nuggets series, and that really kind of changed things there. And then in this series, he stuck with Howard. McGee hasn't seen the court, and you're not hearing anything out of it because I think at this point these guys know, hey, we have a chance to win a championship. It's all about sacrifice and playing your role to the best of your ability.
Keith, obviously Doc Rivers is the new head coach for the 76ers. We kind of touched on that it was down to that last week when you were on, but he since has had his press conference, so I want to get your thoughts on some of the things he said in the press conference. One, he said he considered taking a break, but he simply could not turn down this Sixers roster. He said he had 3 teams, maybe it's 5 teams, or 3 teams within 5 minutes that were interested in him right away. But he said, I'm not just going to coach anybody. I was ready to take a break. It depended on the team that was available. So why for him was the Sixers a good enough team to, not take another interview?
Yeah, my guess for Doc is there's two pieces at play there. One is it's already a pretty good team. And I know folks are still disappointed in the way this season went, but they were still a good team. They made the playoffs, and Ben Simmons was hurt, and it just, kind of changed things a little bit, but still a pretty good, year for Philadelphia. So I think it's one is that team's built to win and win right now. And, potentially with, a couple of moves and a, better coaching job, maybe they can compete to get to an NBA Finals. I think the second thing for Doc, which is, the attraction to taking a 5-year contract, is that's a big enough window where if they retool the roster at all, he's got time to kind of rework that. It's not NBA head coach jobs often are 4 years, which is really a 3-year contract with a team option on the 4th year. That's generally how those work. And I think if you're Doc, you're looking at it and saying, hey, if we, kind of, break this thing apart and retool it a little, I'll still be, afforded the luxury of time to make this work on the back end. So I think those are the two things that probably had him most excited about being able to go in there.
What do you think his best asset is as a head coach entering this core group?
I'm going to give you two things off the court. He's fantastic at managing people and egos and getting guys to buy into the bigger and greater good. He really did a fantastic job with that initially when he coached the Orlando Magic about 15, 16 years ago. He came in with a team that was largely built to not be very good. They were bottoming out, and he got that team, right there to playoff contention with a bunch of guys who it was, oh man, this group's just going to gun for stats in their next contract. He got buy-in and got those guys going. And then when they brought in Grant Hill and Tracy McGrady, that team continued to be pretty good. Then with the Boston Celtics, he had a couple rough years in there, but by the time they acquired Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen to play with Paul Pierce, that was no small challenge. They did that move very late. People forget that trade happened at the very end of July. The free agent market was pretty barren, and they had to, really kind of piece together because I want to say they sent 6 or 7 guys and picks out in exchange for those 2 players. So they were really behind the 8 ball with building out a roster, and Doc was able to bring them together and get everybody to sacrifice, and then kept that window open for a couple years longer than was ever intended. And then with the Clippers, that was a tough group of personalities to manage. On the court, I think what you're going to see is a team that plays a little more disciplined and a team that they'll run really good stuff out of timeouts. I think you'll see him make really good use of the personnel.
He said that Ben and Joel have won 65% when they play together. So much talk, Keith, about do they work together. I was a little, when I heard that, I was like, that's kind of interesting. So many people aren't sure that those 2 guys can play. Is Doc Rivers the right coach from his past to get the most out of those 2 guys?
To an extent. There's only so much he can do. A lot depends on who the other 3 guys on the court are around those 2. And then, of course, the reserves in there as well. I think you'll see Doc do a really good job taking advantage of Ben Simmons' skill set. He did a lot with Blake Griffin. Before Blake was any kind of threat as a shooter, he did a lot with Griffin as a facilitator, somebody who initiated offense from the power forward position, and somebody who could really, do some things as far as making plays. And I think you'll see him do that. If he chooses to go with, hey, we're putting Al Horford on the bench, I think you're going to see it as, all right, we can't talk about the contract anymore because it is what it is. But if this is what is best for the team, that's what's going to be best. And then I think you'll see everybody will kind of more easily buy into that. Where for Brett Brown, that was kind of a yo-yo game where it was, all right, we're going to start him, or we'll bring him off the bench, we're going to start him again. And he just never really found that right balance. And then with Joel Embiid, I wouldn't be surprised if you see him, at least in his first couple years under Doc, have some of his better seasons as far as his focus and his conditioning, because Doc is going to challenge him. And what he's going to tell those 2 young guys is, hey, you have the chance to be the best guys. You have the chance to lead this thing. Go out there and do it. Or, you know what, we're going to work on something different, and we'll look different. And he has the gravitas, again, with a 5-year contract, to say that and have it have meaning.
As the guy who came up with this idea for the bubble and wrote about it a while back, and the bubble came to fruition, kind of give us a how impressed you are with the bubble and how it worked, and just the whole. I know that you weren't in the bubble per se, but the fact that this idea was kind of something that came out and then all of a sudden it happened and that they accomplished it. And by the way, to my remembrance, there has not been one positive test in that bubble, correct?
The NBA staff, no, you're absolutely correct. There has not been a single positive test. They had a couple when teams initially arrived that they took care of immediately through quarantining, though they never came out and said whether they were players or staffers, but that was something that came into the bubble, but the protocols caught it. They took care of it, and it went off without a hitch, so much so that we've never been told, who it was or what teams they were from or anything like that. And if you remember, right before the bubble happened, you had several teams dealing with like some kind of, mini outbreaks. The Denver Nuggets showed up with, about half a roster because they had so many guys who had positive tests and the like. And then they came in a little bit later, a week or two after everyone got there. So that, what they were able to do is, I don't mean to say this with any sense of arrogance, but I'm not surprised. I know what Disney can do when Disney is involved. I know that the power they have to make things happen. I know how isolated and how well the Walt Disney World property can keep the outside world out. You see that when you come on vacation, you are really, in a different kind of place, a different kind of world. But then when you combine them with the ESPN and the power of the entire Disney company with the NBA, with some of these private medical companies and the like, you can see what can get done. And the thoughtfulness and thoroughness and detail in the plan, the level of care that went into all of it, it really shows what you can do, especially as you look with some of the challenges Major League Baseball has had, and then some of the things that are going on in the NFL now. And I know that those are very different situations, and a bubble's not realistic for them, but I think it does show, wow, the NBA really did this and did this well. Now, on the flip side of it, they could never do it again. I don't think anybody would ever agree to, all right, yeah, let's go stay in a place for 3 months and, stay there and, play it out this way. So it was, right place, right time with the right level of care and commitment, and they were able to pull off something really, really special.
Now, that said, I know Gary Bettman mentioned that, hockey might start around, February?
January 1st is like the soft
January
date.
1st, right.
Soft date.
To relaunch. What is the anticipation for what the 2021 season will look like?
Yeah, one of the things that we're hearing a little bit now is it's starting to sound like free agency is going to start right around December 1st. That's what several of the teams are very, very loosely planning for because nothing has been locked in. It seems like what's going to happen is they've had some of the higher level conversations, things that have to happen that aren't attached to a date, are starting to get locked in. And then as soon as this season wraps up, which is going to be at some point, in the next week here, then Adam Silver and his group are going to sit down with Michelle Roberts and her group and hammer everything out from there. It sounds like they would like to start next season sometime in January. One of the things that keeps getting thrown out is Martin Luther King Day, which would clearly be a very special day. It's already a special day on the NBA calendar. It would have a lot of meaning for them to start the season there, but that's still highly up in the air because one of the other things they'd like to do is how can we start it with as many fans and arenas as possible? And there's an ownership there of we might need to go a little bit of the route of the NFL and Major League. Well, I don't think baseball had anybody, but the NFL where some of them have some fans in and some aren't quite ready for that. But that is something that they want to do. But the best part, if you're a basketball fan, is they're 100% committed. We're going to have an 82-game season next year, no matter what, barring something really unexpected. And that is, something that both sides are very, very committed to.
I did hear Mark Cuban on a podcast say that he didn't think that they should have fans and play a season and start the next season until there was a vaccine. So I don't know how much power his voice is, but that's what he said.
Yeah, I've heard some of that out there as well. I think there is, the challenge with that, and I'm only going off the same kind of things I read in the news, read and hear on the news myself. Is it might be a long time before a vaccine is readily available for people, and then how do you ensure everybody had it? We already don't have those situations today, so I think they're looking at a couple different options there of I think that would be an ideal situation, but I think they're also looking at it and saying, hey, we don't know that we can wait quite that long, and maybe that means playing starting next season without fans in arenas, and we start with some kind of modified schedule and those kind of things. But the hope and push is going to be to get all 82 games in, followed by a full playoffs, no matter when that means next season ends.
All right, we'll keep our eye on that. One game potentially left. It's Friday night, right? 9 o'clock is the tip-off for the Lakers and Heat. And, of course, Keith Smith from Yahoo Sports covers the NBA. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks so much, Keith.
I appreciate it, guys. You all stay safe, you and yours.